Imagine the elite of a regular army, perfect discipline, the latest rifles, heavy artillery, and generals absolutely confident in their own superiority. But are you ready to learn the shocking truth about why these heavily armed, celebrated troops suffered humiliating and crushing defeats as soon as they set foot in the endless wild wastelands? What has been hidden for centuries behind the glittering facade of civilization's invincible war machine will forever and completely overturn your understanding of survival in extreme climates. Trained regular regiments, laden with state-of-the-art European equipment, suddenly found themselves completely blind and helpless in the face of merciless nature and the unmatched, almost ghostly tactics of the indigenous peoples. Their heavy, expensive equipment instantly turned into a deadly burden, and classic military regulations into a guaranteed ticket to the afterlife. The Great Plains and the merciless, sun-scorched southern wastelands showed no mercy to the Army's arrogance. They demanded a completely different approach, almost alien to white men, to movement, perfect camouflage, and the search for vital resources. Be sure to watch this video all the way to the very last second, because today we're going to dissect the anatomy of this war of attrition. You'll learn how a masterful knowledge of hidden natural caches, a complete shift in the daily rhythm of life, and the expert use of the internal resources of killed prey allowed Native American warriors to literally vanish into the wilderness without a trace. And in the middle of the video, I'll show you one ingenious trick for obtaining water in the completely barren steppe that drove regular commanders mad with helplessness. Ready? Then give it a like in advance, subscribe to the channel, and we're off to the front lines. What if I told you that everything you believed is a lie? Regular Army officers considered arid territories completely impassable for large groups of people. The indigenous inhabitants of these lands proved the utter fallacy of this arrogant misconception. The desert seemed empty and lifeless only to those who did not know how to read it. Rocky gorges and dry riverbeds concealed a whole network of secret reservoirs of life-giving moisture. The warriors kept a detailed map of the location of every stream within a 200-mile radius in their minds. This information had been passed down through generations and was the tribe's most closely guarded secret. The soldiers moved from one major water source to another along predictable routes. The natives easily covered vast distances by using tiny springs in rocky crevices. This approach gave them a tremendous advantage in speed and maneuverability during a pursuit. One of the most striking examples was a cavalry regiment's pursuit of a small group of warriors across a mountain range. The column of pursuers stretched for many miles, rapidly losing strength under the scorching sun. The warriors moved across solid ground, leaving minimal tracks on the scorching rocks. Every few hours, they turned into depressions filled with rainwater, hidden in the shade of the rocks. The regular army passed right by these springs, completely unaware of their existence. The military doctrine of the time required a massive supply train. Wheeled carts with barrels could not navigate the narrow mountain trails. This forced commanders to stick to wide valleys with long, dry riverbeds. The warriors deliberately led their pursuers farther and farther away from the known, mapped oases. The cumbersome military machine sputtered and came to a halt, deprived of its main driving force. Secret water sources were often small stone basins hidden beneath a layer of dry sand. A traveler had to know the exact location and dig down to the right depth. Water in such reservoirs remained fresh for weeks thanks to the absence of direct sunlight. The warriors carefully scooped out the necessary amount of water and then camouflaged the hiding place again with stones and branches. Pursuers could stand right on top of such a spring and suffer from unbearable thirst. The system of hidden springs allowed for rapid marches in any direction without relying on rivers. This completely undermined the classic strategy of encirclement and blockade employed by generals. Detachments easily slipped through patrol lines, disappearing into the endless rocky wastelands. Every fold of the terrain became a reliable ally for those who knew its secrets. The soldiers, however, perceived the surrounding landscape as an utterly hostile and insurmountable barrier. The facade of civilized military superiority shattered against the harsh reality of survival. Technological superiority meant nothing where a handful of water became the primary resource. The laws of the wasteland proved stronger than the regulations of general staffs and classical tactical schemes. I'd love to hear your perspective. What do you think about the superiority of knowledge over brute force? Share your thoughts in the comments. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new investigations into historical mysteries. The secret for which people pay thousands lies in the ability to outwit the sun itself. During the day, temperatures in the wastelands reached incredible heights, melting even stones. Moving under direct sunlight quickly led to heat stroke and complete physical exhaustion. The indigenous people completely changed their daily routine during periods of military activity. They turned into nocturnal shadows, gliding silently across the cooling sand dunes and rocks. During the day, the warriors sought out deep caves or narrow crevices with cool air. They set up shelters, carefully camouflaging the entrances with branches and dry grass to hide them from prying eyes. During these hours, the unit would fall completely silent, sinking into a deep, restorative sleep. The regular army, on the other hand, was strictly bound by a daytime schedule of movements according to regulations. Soldiers marched during the hottest part of the day, losing vast amounts of precious moisture. The onset of twilight served as a signal for the elusive detachments to begin active operations. The cool of the night allowed them to cover dozens of miles without the slightest risk of overheating. The warriors' eyesight had adapted perfectly to the minimal light from the stars and the moon. They found their way unerringly among treacherous cliffs and deep canyons. Meanwhile, the cavalry set up camp and lit bonfires, completely giving away their positions. This shift in activity schedules completely disrupted the logistics of the pursuing military units. Soldiers spent the day on an exhausting march, and at night were forced to maintain heavy guard duty at the camp. Constant tension and sleep deprivation quickly undermined the morale of the regular units. The indigenous people, on the other hand, remained fresh and highly alert every night. They themselves chose the time and place for short, exhausting skirmishes. Officers tried to organize night marches, but this led to even greater disasters. Unaccustomed to the darkness, soldiers broke their legs on rocky scree and lost their bearings. The wheels of heavy wagons got stuck in invisible potholes, delaying the movement of the entire massive column. As a result, the Army command was forced to abandon attempts at pursuit during the dark hours. This definitively handed the initiative over to the masters of nighttime movement. This rhythm of life allowed them to cover distances that seemed fantastical to the generals. A detachment could find itself 100 miles from where it was last seen. The ability to blend into the darkness turned the warriors into a true mystical terror for the garrisons. They appeared out of nowhere and vanished just as swiftly with the first rays of dawn. The nighttime wilderness became their reliable fortress, whose gates were closed to strangers. Nature dictated its harsh rules, and only those who knew how to obey them survived. The Army tried to impose its own laws on the wasteland, for which it paid with the complete failure of its operations. A change of pace proved more effective than any tactical formations or artillery batteries. Do you think modern equipment could level the playing field in terms of adaptation to such conditions? And in the next chapter, we'll examine an incredible method of obtaining moisture that shocked the Army's trackers. The hidden truth that everyone keeps quiet about reveals the true limits of human endurance. When all known springs had dried up, the most radical survival methods were employed. Regular troops in such situations simply panicked and began a chaotic retreat. The warriors of the wastelands knew that life-giving moisture was not found only in rock crevices. They turned to the fauna itself for precious drops of the life-saving liquid. During long treks across the scorched plateaus, detachments often faced complete dehydration. In such cases, hunters tracked down the large inhabitants of the wasteland, using their camouflage skills. A successful hunt for a large beast provided not only nutritious meat, but also something far more important. The internal juices and fluids of fresh prey became the only source of relief from thirst. This harsh custom shocked European settlers, but was entirely natural for the indigenous people. Consuming the prey's bodily fluids required special mental and physical preparation. This act was purely pragmatic and dictated by harsh necessity. The warriors treated the resources provided by the harsh wilderness with the utmost respect. Not a single drop of precious moisture was to be wasted on the scorching sand. This practice allowed the party to continue their journey for several more long days until they reached the nearest oasis. The process of extracting moisture from the kill required quick and precise actions on the hunter's part. In the dry, hot air, the liquid evaporated rapidly or thickened in literally a matter of minutes. The warriors knew how to carefully extract the necessary internal organs, which retain the greatest amount of precious fluids. This knowledge was passed down from experienced trackers to the young during long treks. It was precisely these skills that formed the continent's unrivaled school of survival. In addition to hunting wildlife, hidden reservoirs in the roots of certain plants were widely used. However, it was hunting that provided the fastest and most powerful energy boost for an exhausted body. Animal-derived fluids contain the necessary salts and trace elements lost through profuse sweating. They instantly restored mental clarity and allowed the muscles to work at their limit. Ordinary well water could not provide such a rapid regenerative effect. The army's tactics were based on cutting off the enemy's access to known bodies of water and rivers. The generals naively believed that this would inevitably force the rebellious tribes to surrender to the victor's mercy. But the ability to find moisture within other organisms rendered this strategy completely useless. The warriors transformed their very environment into an endless source for replenishing their internal reserves. A siege could last for weeks without yielding any results for the regular regiments. The clash of two worlds revealed the complete failure of the civilized approach to extreme conditions. True superiority lay not in the number of muskets, but in merging with the environment. The rigid framework of military regulations proved to be a fatal flaw for thousands of soldiers in blue uniforms. The indigenous peoples demonstrated astonishing flexibility and adaptability to the harshest challenges. Their methods remain an unsurpassed example of the ideal interaction between man and the harsh natural world. Every element of their tactics was designed for maximum effectiveness with minimal resource expenditure. The ability to utilize the internal juices of their prey became the crowning achievement of this harsh philosophy of survival. This knowledge forever changed the course of many long-running conflicts across the dusty expanses of the great continent. If you enjoy these in-depth analyses of historical survival methods, be sure to like this video. Your support helps us create even more unique and exciting documentary content. What happens in the shadows often hides history's most striking revelations. The vast expanses from the Missouri to the Rocky Mountains seem to Europeans like a frightening and monotonous void. To the average soldier, the endless horizon offered no landmarks to hold on to. Yet to the indigenous peoples, it was a densely populated and resource-rich homeland. They read this complex landscape as easily as an educated officer read a staff map. Their ability to navigate the terrain without a compass or astronomical instruments was truly phenomenal. They memorized the shape of every distant hill and the direction in which solitary dry trees grew. The wind, carrying faint scents for hundreds of miles, unerringly pointed the way to hidden oases. The warriors even took into account the angle at which the sun's rays fell on rocky outcrops at different times of the year. This built-in navigation system allowed them to travel along the most obscure and shortest routes. Army patrols, clad in heavy uniforms, were ideal targets. Their movement was accompanied by the clang of metal, the creak of leather armor, and the loud commands of officers. They constantly disrupted the natural harmony of the wasteland, immediately alerting everyone to their approach. The indigenous people moved in perfect harmony with the ambient sounds of their surroundings. They stepped only on solid ground, carefully avoiding dry branches and rustling fine gravel. Knowledge of the wasteland dwellers' habits also played a huge role in the early warning system. A sudden rustle in the dry grass or an unnatural crack of branches served as a clear signal. The warriors instantly understood from which direction the danger was approaching and managed to set up an ambush. The soldiers, however, marched straight ahead, paying no attention to such subtle cues from the surrounding nature. They were completely blind in a world that did not fit within the framework of military regulations. The illusion of emptiness was the main weapon, effectively lulling the regular units into a false sense of security. The weary columns stretched out on the march, believing they were completely safe in the open terrain. It was at that very moment that a lightning-fast and devastating strike was launched from the invisible folds of the terrain. After a brief skirmish, the attackers vanished just as quickly into the mirages of the shimmering hot air. The army could do nothing but fire helplessly into the void, seeing not a single enemy before them. The experience of such clashes drove the generals to a state of extreme irritation and utter despair. They could not utilize their main advantage, massed rifle fire in close formation. Their opponent refused to play by the rules of European military science, imposing its own harsh conditions. The wilderness became the very testing ground where quantity and strict discipline yielded to the quality of adaptation. This land protected those who knew its laws and cruelly punished the clumsy strangers. Perfect camouflage and silence rendered any attempts at pursuit utterly futile. The intent of the maneuver always remained a mystery to the officers right up until the moment of the surprise attack. The warriors appeared where they were least expected and vanished without a trace. Their tactics represented the pinnacle of asymmetric warfare in the continent's harsh climate. They were the true masters of these lands, having proven their indisputable right to this territory. This invisible presence kept the regular units in a constant state of extreme nervous tension. The fear of a hidden threat wore people down more than even the longest and most arduous day march. Could you have kept your composure under such immense psychological pressure? In the next chapter, you'll learn how they coped with this terrible weather without warm homes. The continental climate of the interior regions was marked by incredible daily temperature swings. While the sun scorched all living things during the day, a piercing cold descended upon the rocky plateau at night. The difference in temperatures between noon and midnight could be several dozen degrees. Regular army soldiers, dressed in standard woolen uniforms, suffered from both of these extremes. Their issued gear was completely unsuitable for survival in such a volatile natural environment. The indigenous people used a layered approach to clothing, easily adapting it to changing conditions. During the day, they made do with a minimal number of light capes that protected their skin from direct sunburn. As dusk fell, they brought out thick capes that excellently retained precious body heat. These garments could be easily rolled into a compact bundle and did not weigh down their packs during a fast march. Such flexibility allowed them to maintain optimal thermoregulation at any time of day. Physical activity was also strictly regulated depending on the current ambient temperature. The most strenuous physical exertion took place in the morning hours, when the air was still relatively cool. At the peak of the heat, all movement was kept to a minimum to conserve precious internal moisture. This rule was strictly observed by all members of the group, regardless of the urgency of the task at hand. Regular troops drove their columns forward at midday, dooming people to exhaustion and fainting. The ability to control one's own breathing helped significantly reduce heat loss on freezing nights. The warriors took even, shallow breaths, holding the warm air in their lungs for as long as possible. This skill required long training and concentration, but it reliably protected them from frostbite on the march. In the cold, soldiers began to breathe heavily and rapidly losing their body's precious energy. The difference in physical conditioning became a decisive factor in protracted battles fought to the point of complete exhaustion. Adaptation to the harsh climate began at a very early age in the harsh conditions of nomadic life. Young people grew accustomed to enduring cold and heat without complaint, tirelessly training their body's endurance. By the time of initiation, a young man had become virtually invulnerable to the weather anomalies of this boundless wasteland. Hardening made their bodies incredibly tough, muscular, and impervious to constant climatic stress. European recruits who found themselves in these lands would break down physically within the very first weeks of grueling marches. The absence of heavy baggage trains allowed mobile units to quickly change their camp elevation in the mountains. When temperatures dropped sharply, they descended into warm valleys, skillfully avoiding freezing on high mountain passes. The cavalry, burdened with wagons and cannons, could not react so quickly to sudden changes in the weather. The army often found itself trapped by unexpected snowfalls on narrow mountain trails, losing valuable mules and men. The flexibility of their movements once again proved its absolute superiority over the unwieldy military machine. Even the choice of diet was subject to the strict laws of the human body's thermal balance. In cold weather, a high-calorie dried mixture was consumed, providing a long-lasting energy boost for warmth. In the heat, preference was given to light foods that did not cause profuse and uncontrollable sweating. Officers, however, fed the soldiers standard rations of salted meat and hardtack in absolutely any weather. Salty food caused incredible thirst, which became downright fatal in the midday heat. The climatic swings turned every military campaign into a true test of human endurance. The warriors of the wastelands used the weather as their most reliable, free and destructive weapon. They simply waited for the scorching sun and the night chill to do the heavy lifting for them. Such tactics of passive attrition proved far more effective than classic open battles. Nature always remained the ultimate and impartial judge in conflicts across these vast and harsh lands. An experiment that did not go according to plan revealed the incredible potential of human speed. One of the main reasons for the failure of army operations was the incredible mobility of small detachments. Generals were accustomed to calculating troop movement speeds based on standard European infantry movement rates. However, the indigenous people moved across rough terrain several times faster than cavalry columns. This phenomenal speed shattered absolutely all the strategic calculations of the arrogant staff officers. The secret to their mobility lay in the absolute minimalism of each long-range expedition participant's equipment. A warrior carried only the most essential weapons and a small supply of high-calorie dry rations. They had no heavy backpacks, spare uniforms, bulky tents, or metal cooking utensils. The lightness of their gear allowed them to maintain a high running pace for many hours on end without rest. A cavalryman, on the other hand, carried dozens of kilograms of standard issue equipment and heavy fodder on his horse. Speed was used not only for the attack, but also for a lightning-fast retreat once the operation was complete. After carrying out the sabotage, the group would instantly scatter and head to a prearranged secret rendezvous point. By the time the cavalry reserve arrived at the scene, there was absolutely no one left to pursue. The warriors vanished into the horizon at a speed that left the army's trackers in a state of utter despair. They were like elusive ghosts, materializing only for a moment to deliver a precise strike. An important element of rapid movement was the ability to properly distribute forces along the entire road. The detachment moved at a steady pace, not speeding up unnecessarily on descents and not slowing down on steep ascents. Short stops were made only to catch one's breath or take a sip of precious natural water. Discipline on the march was strictest. No one was allowed to fall behind or disrupt the established rhythm. This transformed a disparate group of people into a single, perfectly coordinated survival machine. Time and again, the officers tried to drive the enemy into a trap using flanking maneuvers, but the soldiers' mobility allowed them to easily evade the attack before the encirclement was fully closed. They simply outran the stretched-out army lines, leaving frustrated soldiers behind to eat dust. The speed at which squad leaders made decisions was also orders of magnitude faster than that of the sluggish headquarters bureaucracy. The initiative always remained with those who could act as quickly as possible and without regard for regulations. The ability to rapidly cover great distances nullified the numerical superiority of regular units. A small detachment could successfully attack several distant outposts within a day or two. This created a persistent illusion among the command that a massive enemy army was present throughout the entire controlled territory. Generals were forced to divide their forces into small garrisons, catastrophically weakening the overall strength of the group. Mobility proved to be the most effective and reliable method of waging asymmetric guerrilla warfare. The rapidity of their actions shattered the morale of soldiers who felt their absolute and inevitable helplessness. Do you think speed is the main advantage over heavy weaponry in modern strategy? In the next chapter, you will learn exactly how they manage without the usual architectural structures at their campsites. Survival in extreme conditions is impossible without the ability to quickly organize reliable temporary shelter. A nomadic lifestyle taught indigenous peoples to build temporary shelters from the simplest materials at hand. They had absolutely no need for heavy canvas tents, iron stakes, or massive wooden supports. They masterfully utilized what the harsh natural environment generously provided at their specific campsite. The architecture of their temporary camps was striking in its ingenious simplicity and incredible practical functionality. In the wooded foothills, shelters were quickly constructed from thin poles and pine or fir branches. The frame was assembled in the shape of a cone or dome, which provided excellent aerodynamics and stability in strong winds. Coniferous branches were laid in a dense layer, forming a reliable roof that completely kept out torrential rain. Inside such a shelter, body heat was excellently retained, and the strong scent of pine needles masked the human scent. It took an experienced warrior no more than half an hour of precious time to construct such a reliable shelter. During the heavy snowstorms typical of northern regions, deep snow trenches were used. Warriors dug deep pits in dense snowdrifts, creating reliable protection from the biting, icy wind. The bottom was lined with shrub branches or spare clothing to insulate against the cold surface of the frozen ground. Body heat warmed the enclosed space, maintaining a life-saving above-freezing temperature inside. In such conditions, the Army's tall tents were often blown away by the wind, leaving soldiers vulnerable to severe hypothermia. The use of natural caves and rock overhangs was a true art of blending into the rocky terrain. The soldiers never lit large fires inside the stone shelters, so as not to suffocate from the accumulated smoke. They used hot stones brought from outside to gently and safely heat the enclosed space. The cave entrances were carefully camouflaged to look like natural scree or ancient debris piles. This allowed the unit to wait out bad weather or Army patrol activity in complete safety for days on end. Officers systematically underestimated the enemy's ability to live comfortably without massive permanent structures. They naively believed that the onset of a harsh winter would inevitably force the rebellious tribes out of the wilderness and toward the forts. But the ability to construct warm and concealed shelters allowed the indigenous people to conduct active operations year-round. The Army's winter campaigns often ended in catastrophic losses due to widespread frostbite among the troops. Time and again, natural shelters proved their undeniable superiority over the Army's cold tarpaulins. The ability to make do with little and find reliable protection in simple things amazed European observers. It was a true triumph of minimalism and a deep understanding of the physical properties of ordinary natural materials. In every broken branch and every unremarkable stone, the warriors saw a potential tool for their survival. This unique worldview made them virtually invulnerable in the face of the most severe climatic disasters. They did not struggle against nature for survival. They simply became a full-fledged and organic part of it. The engineering of mobile nomadic camps remained completely unnoticed and misunderstood by the staff strategists of the regular Army. Pride and prejudice prevented officers from adopting such seemingly primitive methods of organizing encampments. As a result, the massive military machine continued to suffer enormous non-combat losses due to the continent's harsh weather conditions. Shelters made from nothing reliably saved the lives of those who knew how to view the world around them with true respect. The knowledge of the ancestors proved far more durable than any fortifications erected by self-assured outsiders. The art of reading tracks was one of the most sophisticated systems of information analysis in those distant times. To an untrained soldier, the rocky surface of the wasteland seemed like a completely blank, unreadable page. However, an experienced tracker saw in this surface a detailed and accurate chronicle of the events of the past few days. An overturned pebble, a broken blade of dry grass, or a displaced speck of dust came together to form a clear and coherent narrative. This science was carefully passed down from generation to generation, requiring many years of persistent daily training. Trackers could easily determine from the footprints not only the direction of travel, but also the physical condition of the traveler. The depth of the footprint and the exact distance between steps reliably revealed the degree of fatigue or the presence of a heavy load. An experienced eye could easily distinguish the confident stride of a healthy person from the unsteady gait of an exhausted traveler. The depth of a hoofprint allowed for a fairly accurate calculation of the weight of the load carried by a specific riding horse. This information enabled commanders of mobile units to make informed decisions about the advisability of pursuit. The time elapsed since the track was left could be determined with remarkable accuracy based on a multitude of subtle signs. Trackers assessed the degree to which the morning dew had dried inside the impression or the amount of fine dust blown into it by the wind. The condition of the trampled vegetation also provided clear clues about when a large or small detachment had passed. If the edges of a footprint on soft ground had already crumbled away, it meant the group had passed several long hours ago. Such details successfully replaced for the indigenous people the complex mechanical watches and expensive chronometers of the regular Army. Army columns, on the other hand, always left behind wide, deep, and strikingly easy-to-read ruts. The soldiers' hard-soled boots and heavy horse hooves mercilessly plowed through any ground, even the hardest rocky soil. Rumbling heavy supply wagons carved deep furrows that did not disappear for many months. Even the most inexperienced young man from a nomadic tribe could follow such a wide trail. Regular troops were completely deprived of any stealth in their movements across open terrain. Attempts by officers to use regular Army scouts for pursuit most often ended in complete failure. Standard European tracking methods did not work on rocky terrain, where tracks quickly vanished under the influence of the wind. Native trackers relied not only on keen eyesight, but also on their sense of smell and even intuition based on extensive experience. They understood the enemy's psychology and could easily predict their route, even after losing visual contact with the trail. This was an incredibly complex analysis, completely beyond the grasp of graduates of the prestigious military academies of the time. While evading pursuit, they employed highly sophisticated methods of disinformation and artificial trail obfuscation. Warriors might walk several miles directly along a stream bed to completely break the chain of footprints on the ground. They deliberately left false, conspicuous markers, leading inexperienced pursuers into waterless dead ends in deep canyons. Splitting the group into many small units forced Army patrols to also divide their already meager forces. As a result, the soldiers would eventually lose their bearings and give up, ending the futile and exhausting pursuit. Information superiority guaranteed a resounding victory in tactical duels across the vast prairies. Knowing the enemy's exact location and physical condition allowed them to strike at the most vulnerable moments. The general's beautiful staff maps were utterly useless against the living, constantly updated mental map of the trackers. This incredibly subtle science defeated brute force, proving that intellect and observation are far more important than numbers. In the wasteland, it was not the best armed warrior who survived, but the most attentive and perceptive one. The harsh conditions of the wild wasteland had a devastating effect not only on the soldiers' bodies, but also on their minds. The monotonous desert landscape, the absence of familiar European landmarks, and the constant heat gradually drove people mad. The feeling of complete isolation from the civilized world weighed on the regular Army soldiers like an incredibly heavy burden. Every dry bush or long shadow cast by a rock seemed to a weary sentry like an ambush by a hostile tribe. This constant and unrelenting nervous tension wore down the troops far more quickly than long forced marches. Indigenous peoples made very active use of this powerful psychological factor to gradually weaken the enemy. They constantly demonstrated their elusive, invisible presence without engaging in direct, open combat. Severed horse reins, broken arrows near the camp, or artificially created rustling sounds drove the night sentries mad. The soldiers were well aware that they were being constantly watched, but were physically unable to locate the source of the threat. Uncertainty became the most terrifying and insidious enemy, undermining strict discipline within the ranks of the regular troops. Insomnia became a widespread phenomenon among soldiers participating in long expeditions through these lands. The anticipation of a sudden night attack prevented the exhausted men from relaxing for even a single minute during rest stops. Officers were forced to constantly post double guards, depriving soldiers of proper and much-needed rest. The harsh, untouched natural environment was perceived by the exhausted soldiers as a manifestation of the very land's direct hostility. They sincerely hated the scorching southern sun, the prickly low shrubs, and the endless dust that gritted their teeth. The indigenous people, on the other hand, were in a state of absolute harmony with their boundless homeland. They drew strength from the very phenomena that Europeans considered insurmountable obstacles and unbearable hardships. This difference in perception of reality created a vast mental chasm between the morale of the two opposing sides. Prisoners or soldiers who had accidentally fallen behind and miraculously managed to return told chilling, unbelievable stories. They described the enemy as semi-mythical, supernatural beings capable of vanishing into thin air and even reading minds. These rumors spread rapidly and uncontrollably throughout the garrisons, sowing panic among the newly arrived recruits from Europe. A primal fear of the elusive enemy paralyzed the initiative of junior commanders, forcing them to avoid long-range patrols of the territories. The indigenous peoples won the psychological war outright thanks to their masterful exploitation of the enemy's fears. The ability to completely break the enemy's will before the battle begins is the true pinnacle of military strategy. The warriors of the wastelands mastered this art to absolute perfection, drawing on a deep understanding of the subtle nature of human beings. They masterfully transformed the very atmosphere of the region into their most formidable and inevitable weapon of mental deterrence. The European war machine, geared toward direct linear clashes, had no defense against such an impact. It was a clash of two utterly different philosophies where blind pragmatism yielded to incredibly subtle calculation. Total psychological superiority became a solid foundation for all the nomadic units' other tactical successes. Time and again, this invisible force forced arrogant generals to admit their powerlessness in the face of a handful of defenders of their land. Ultimately, it was the unyielding will to win and fortitude of spirit that determined the outcome of all local confrontations. Soldiers quickly broke under the weight of unfamiliar conditions, while the warriors only grew stronger. The human mind proved to be just as important a battlefield as the dried-up beds of rocky rivers. Studying the survival methods of indigenous peoples reveals a unique picture of the ideal symbiosis between humans and the natural environment. All their tactical military maneuvers, tricks, and skills were based on the deepest respect for the vast expanse surrounding them. They made no attempt whatsoever to conquer the wilderness, reshape it to suit their needs, or bend it to artificial rules. On the contrary, they humbly and attentively studied its laws, adapting their entire way of life to them. This wise approach ensured their absolute superiority in conditions where Europeans were simply dying en masse. The regular army was a symbol of civilization's extremely aggressive intrusion into the fragile ecosystem of the wild, untouched prairies. Soldiers mercilessly cut down rare groves for firewood, poisoned springs with their waste, and thoughtlessly exterminated the scarce game. Nature responded cruelly with severe storms, parching, unbearable heat, and diseases caused by the unsanitary conditions of the army camps. It was a senseless war of attrition in which the military machine attempted to conquer the continent's harsh climate itself. The outcome of this unequal struggle was always predetermined against those who crudely disregarded the laws of the universe. The ability to find hidden oases, move silently at night, and obtain water through unconventional means. These are all parts of a single philosophy. Each of these skills was a completely organic extension of the others, forming a comprehensive system of self-sufficient existence. Isolating individual tactical maneuvers yielded absolutely no results. The secret lay in their harmonious combination. Time and again, officers attempted to copy elements of camouflage, but without a shift in mindset, it remained nothing more than a futile imitation. To master this complex science, one had to completely reshape one's attitude toward the harsh world around them. Asymmetric tactics of lightning-fast guerrilla operations became the only possible response to a massive armed invasion. They completely nullified the difference in technological equipment, bringing the individual training of each separate warrior to the forefront. Bulky artillery batteries and long, unwieldy infantry columns proved utterly useless against the shadows gliding through the canyons. This protracted war proved that flexibility and mobility could effectively halt even the most powerful military machine. The knowledge of their ancestors proved to be a far more formidable weapon than all the industrial might of the eastern factories and plants. The incredible physical endurance of the nomadic warriors was the result not merely of training, but of harsh natural selection. Life in the harsh climatic conditions of the steppes left a real chance of survival only for the strongest, fastest, and most observant individuals. Their bodies evolved under the influence of the climate, gradually transforming into ideal tools for survival on the wastelands. Soldiers, suddenly torn from their warm apartments, simply lacked the necessary genetic and powerful physiological potential. The difference in natural adaptability was so great that this confrontation was inherently completely unequal. However, the greatest value of this rich historical experience lies not in military applications, but in an understanding of ecology. Their harmonious way of life is the greatest example of how humans can successfully exist without destroying the foundation of their habitat. They took from nature exactly what was vitally necessary for survival, leaving resources for future generations. This incredible balance guaranteed the stability of their society for many centuries until the fateful arrival of the Europeans. Modern technological civilization has yet to relearn this crucial lesson of harmonious and careful coexistence with the planet. The history of this long-standing confrontation in dusty deserts and deep canyons is not merely a series of dry dates and battles won. It is an incredibly instructive tale of the fatal clash between the arrogance of the industrial world and the wisdom of the millennia-old traditions of primitive peoples. Despite the grim outcome of global colonization, the nomads' tactical victories have forever entered the annals of world military history. They indisputably proved that a spirit firmly rooted in an understanding of nature is virtually impossible to break by any material means. The memory of their incredible feats continues to inspire those who truly value freedom and independence. The secrets of survival in the scorched wastelands remain a vivid testament to the boundless capabilities of the human body and mind. What quite rightly seemed impossible for a civilized soldier was a daily routine for the son of the wild prairies. Their rich legacy is a resounding call to respect the power of nature and to constantly improve one's inner spiritual qualities. The harsh wilderness is always ready to share its secrets with those who sincerely know how to listen to its quiet voice. Knowledge, time and again tested by centuries of harsh trials, never loses its true value or relevance in our world. We've examined the incredible methods that allowed nomadic peoples to defeat regular armies in the harshest natural conditions. From hidden water caches to nighttime movements, each tactic was a masterpiece of survival strategy. Their history teaches us flexibility, observation, and respect for forces that transcend human understanding. Which of the three main secrets of survival in the wilderness do you think was the most decisive in battle? Subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new in-depth analyses of historical mysteries and forgotten technologies.